Thank you, everyone, for being with us for these 2 days. We're coming to our conclusion, and I just want to end briefly by coming back to General Powell, Secretary of State Powell, who I invoked yesterday morning when we started, and whose memorial service is tomorrow. I have 3 favorite sayings of General Powell's. 1, the ties that bind us are stronger than the stresses that divide us. 2, perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. And 3, war should be the politics of last resort. These are 3 great reminders for all of us here in this room, and I want to reflect on how this conference actually dealt with each of these 3. So first, the ties that bind us are stronger than the stresses that divide us. I have to say, one theme that went through almost every discussion we had is that Xi Jinping managed to do what no one else in Washington has, and that is bring Republicans and Democrats together. So, when we heard the supply chain panel and many others, Representatives Slotkin and McCall, talking about their bipartisan work on supply chains, on the CHIPS Act, on the Endless Frontiers Act, you just heard over and over again that we are united in wanting to manage responsibly the rise of China. Ben Sasse told us, Senator Sasse, that when he's home in Nebraska, people care much more about their common humanity and kitchen table issues than what we're talking about here with reconciliation and taxes, et cetera, et cetera. And Amy Walter and Arthur Brooks reminded us that perhaps we should all start our conversations not with politics, which divide us, but with our children and love and all of the things that we have in common, and then maybe there'll be more room for compromise. Second, optimism is a force multiplier. And we heard some real optimism here, even though our challenges are profound. 1, we heard from Secretary Kerry that he's optimistic. The world is lumbering towards solving the biggest national security crisis we face, and that's climate change. He talked about the world recommitting to sticking to 1.5 degrees of warming, to stop reforestation, to stop financing coal-fired power plants around the world. Let's hold them to it. The speakers lauded the success of the Abraham Accords. We didn't talk about the Middle East very much, but I heard several people say, wow, companies from Israel, the UAE, Bahrain are now working together in a way that was unheard of 2 or 3 years ago. General Nakasone and Condi Rice, others commended the human capital that is there in our all-volunteer force. And Mike Brown from DIU and others reminded us that the United States is still the technology superpower, and that hundreds of private sector companies are standing by to help if we only make it easier on them to participate in our national security. It can sometimes feel like the US is in a defensive crouch, but we've been through worse. We've been to the Great Depression, we've been through World War II, we've been through the upheavals of the 60s and 70s. I think what you heard today is optimism that we can get through this as well. And third, the most important one, that war should be and is the politics of very last resort. Everyone you heard from in the past 2 days firmly believes that the United States prepares for conflict precisely so that it doesn't become necessary to put our women and men in harm's way. Dambisa Moyo and several other economists discussed all of the efforts being made to get the global economy and the trading system humming again that unites all of us and that can help prevent war. Many speakers emphasized that diplomacy should lead, and always does, and the commander of Special Operations Forces reminded us that so much of what SOCOM and others in our military do is keep our embassies safe so our diplomats can operate, respond to earthquakes in Haiti, other natural disasters, things that promote peace. And Secretary of Navy Del Toro reminded us that signaling with and communicating with China is one of the most important things that we can be doing so that we don't inadvertently slip into a conflict that nobody wants. And finally, I want to end with Secretary Mayorkas's admonition from his mother that we should all strive to be better tomorrow than we are today. That's the business we're collectively in here at Aspen and with all of you. We're jointly creating a better, safer, more peaceful world. And it's a mission for all of us, not just the speakers that you heard from up here on stage. If you're in the US government, you're in the executive branch, in Congress, elsewhere, you're on the front lines of these issues. So I want to thank you for doing the hard work of our nation and in ways that are often unsung. Our friends in the room who are journalists, please keep reporting on these issues of such importance with nuance and with understanding. It's very important that the American people understand what's at stake here. And all of us in the private sector, as Chris Lynch reminded us, please show up. If you're a technology whiz, don't wait to be called. Help out. Design the AI algorithm that's going to help our national security. Do something else. Use your expertise to be useful to the mission of this country. And to our rising leaders, to the Yale Fellows, all the others who are here who are just beginning your career, your ideas matter. They're fresh, they're new. We heard from some of you, not all of you, unfortunately. Please make your ideas heard, and please, please commit at least some part of your career to public service. So on behalf of Joe Nye and Condi Rice, our chairs, and Nick Burns, our executive director, I want to thank all of you for being willing to learn about the most important issues and contribute your talents. I want to thank our sponsors, again, for making all of this possible. And most of all, I'd like you all to join me in a round of applause for our amazing and tiny team, Neve, John, Deb, Kathleen, Leah, Emily, John Purvis, Maya, Marco, all of the volunteers from the Aspen Institute, the audiovisual team, and everyone at the Intercontinental who has just been fantastic and made all of this possible. Thank you, and good night.